Ooh, hey girl, hey. Happy Monday. If you don't know me, my name is Olivia Thomas. I'm the founder of Intentional Development Co. and the Busy Girls Brunch. And I am here with you on this fabulous Maven Monday. Maven Monday. Maven Monday. Um, to talk about something that's really important and also like near and dear to my heart. So I've been a business owner for the last 11 years. And when I got started, the idea of mental health wasn't necessarily something that was on the table as much. It was kind of the advent of social media, Instagram. So very visual, very aesthetic driven, very aspirational. And everyone who was an entrepreneur in those times was just like, hey, it's pretty, it's fun, and all those things. So the conversation around health in your mind wasn't as prevalent. Um, and especially being a Black woman, it is a whole different world that we exist in terms of being a founder, being a CEO, and then just being a person in general. And all of those things coming together creates an interesting, uh, I don't know, set of conundrums. So I'm excited to talk to Dr. La-Toya Gaines, who specializes in helping Black women exist as themselves and to become more vulnerable and grow, which is all that we ever need to do and ever want to do. So I'm going to bring her to the stage. I'm going to let her introduce herself, and we're going to get into this conversation because it's going to be good. Hey, La-Toya.
Hello, how are you?
I am so well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here.
I am so happy to have you, honestly. So I'm like kind of like in my mind still jumbling through our offstage conversation. And I'm like rushing through the intro because I'm like, oh, I just want to get into it. It's so juicy. But before we do, I would love for you to introduce yourself.
All right. So, my name is Dr. La-Toya Gaines. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I own a private practice in the state of Michigan, where I work mostly with African American women, African American families, just on their mental health. For family, the family work that I do a lot of work with divorce, blended, and separated families or intact families as well. And I also do a lot of work with Black women who are dealing with the burden of strength. And often that shows up as anxiety, depression, maybe some trauma. And so that's what I do here.
I'm in love with your work because the idea of strength is so prevalent in the community because it's almost a badge of honor. We want to be Miss Independent. We want to be strong and just impervious to all the things that are constantly thrown at us, whether personally or professionally. But one of the things we were talking about is how when you're so strong, it's hard to be vulnerable and how growth requires vulnerability. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I think that is the challenge for the strong Black woman. And some of the challenge isn't just being vulnerable, it's finding spaces that feel safe enough to do that, right? Because we sometimes experience vulnerability as a sign of weakness,
Mm.
right? There's this belief that, you just have to be strong, you just need to push through, everything will be okay. And it's like, no, there are times when I don't feel like I have the strength to push through, but who do I share that with? If
Yeah.
everybody else around me sort of also has this framework of strength and independence, then who is it safe to share that part of myself with?
Ah, that is that is such an excellent point because you're right. If none of us are actually showing the realities of our lived experiences, then no one around us is even modeling what it looks like to change, to grow, to even allow for moments of I'm trying to think of another word than weakness, but just like moments of growth, learning.
Yeah, moments of confusion, moments of, where you are growing in your clarity or understanding, right? It is not weakness. It
Yeah.
is, I don't even know what this is yet.
Mm,
And can I just sit in the unknown of this thing, this feeling, this experience, whatever? But often there's this feeling of there's no time for that, right?
yeah.
There's no time for a Black woman to be vulnerable. There's no time to sit in this feeling, because and some of that fear is, if I let myself sit in this, what if I get stuck here? What
Mm,
if I can't get out? What
mm,
if I become so overwhelmed by what I'm going through that there's no way for me to get out from under it? And
yeah.
so to prevent that, there's just this stoicism, this, and don't forget, there's, we have to face the world in these Black bodies, and that's
Yeah.
not an easy daily thing, right? So we get used to putting on that armor, that mask,
Yeah.
to greet the isms of the world. And again, where's the safety? Where's the safe place to take that mask and that armor off?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you mentioned both the external and the internal factors of just what it looks like. And I think those internal factors are they're so interesting because one of the things you were saying is that sometimes we don't even have the language, the way that we talk about depression is not head on to say depression because of, societal reasons and this idea of just like if you're depressed, you're crazy or any of those things. Can you talk a little bit about like how the language affects this journey?
Absolutely. And one of my earliest discoveries of how depression looks different for Black women was during my practicum experience. I was at a university counseling center, and what I was noticing was the differences in how various students of ethnic minority or differences were showing up, right? So there were Black female students who were showing up at the University Health Center, and they weren't saying that they were depressed. And on the outside, they looked like they had it together. But in a session, they were talking about just feeling really tired physically, feeling emotionally exhausted, feeling mentally exhausted, having trouble with motivation, having trouble getting started, um, and just sort of this overall dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
Whereas there were other students who were coming in and saying, no, I'm depressed, and were in many ways looking that way, disheveled, not having completed hygiene, looking sad, being tearful, right? The things
Yeah.
that we might ordinarily associate with depression. And so that sort of sat with me, because these women weren't talking about feeling sad or being depressed, but
Mm,
they were talking about this mental and physical and emotional fatigue,
yeah.
right? And so often the language around that is, I'm just so tired. I'm
Mm,
tired. I'm exhausted. I am physically, I'm just so I'm just depleted, right? That's the language. And so,
mm,
what is interesting and what contributes to Black women being underdiagnosed for depression is when they show up, when they finally show up for help, they're not using the typical language that practitioners use to diagnose depression.
That is because there's no time. Like, you mentioned urgency earlier, and I think that is such a huge factor because we have to take care of families, we have to take care of ourselves. We're constantly put in these matriarchal positions. Even if we're not necessarily the matriarch, we're always kind of the matriarch in training.
Yes.
Yeah. So like I can imagine that that bears on the psyche, on the people who are even trying to come. It's like they know something's wrong. So when they're coming into you, very specifically for therapy, like what are they saying? Because I'm hearing like the physiological things that they're saying. But like how are they saying, how do they come to the decision like, man, I need this?
They are overwhelmed, stressed out, um, unhappy, dissatisfied, and not really understanding why.
Yeah.
Right. And feeling really alone in it because, again, they're looking around and the other women around them look like they have it together, look like they're managing all the roles, all the responsibilities. And that internal dialogue is, well, what's wrong with me
Yeah.
that I can't get this done? Why can't I do it? And the real question is, why are you doing all the things? Why are you? Right?
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's normally how they come in. They're stressed out, they're overwhelmed, they are snapping at everybody. They don't have the luxury of what they really would like to do is come home from work and just go to bed.
Yeah.
Right. But they don't have the luxury of doing that because kids got to eat, family needs to be taken care of, homework's got to be done, baths have to be done, laundry, cooking, all the things. And so
Yeah.
they don't have the luxury of coming home and the day is over and they can just collapse. They have to push through and get these things done. And so they wind up coming in because it's like, I can't keep going like this.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally. I'm overwhelmed. I'm stressed out. I'm gonna snap.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, that is, yeah. I resonate with that. When I first went to therapy, it probably took me about maybe 3 years. And this is also maybe two different therapists before my therapist said, "Oh, this is depression," right? Because I was explaining to her, like, I'm very ambitious and I'm excited about life. At that time, I was kind of in the middle of grief, so I was pushed into therapy because, like, I wanted to be sure that I could still show up for things, and also for my son. I didn't want to shut down completely because of this thing that I understood as sadness at the time.
Right.
Um, but it allowed me to actually go in and talk about all of the other things that were going on too. And then she was like, no, I explained to her, like, sometimes I feel like I want to do something and it almost feels like I am physically hitting a brick wall when I try to go and actually do it. And she's like, oh, she explained to me the brain body connection. And she said, this is what depression actually is. It's not sadness. It is your body trying to protect you from something, some impending potential pain. And I think that is such an important distinction for us to have, that it's not just sadness. So can you explain depression, like what it is in the brain and the body and the emotions?
Yeah, and I think the easiest thing for me to say about that is the fact that depression looks different for everyone. And I know people don't like that, it's like, no, what are the signs and symptoms? And I could have a caseload full of patients who experience depression, and each one of them will come and look very different, right? Some of them are really experiencing the somatic symptoms of depression, right? So the heaviness in their body, the fatigue, the physical fatigue, the emotional fatigue, the headaches, the backaches, they're going to feel it in their body, right?
Yeah.
And others will experience the sadness, the tearfulness, the trouble sleeping, the lack of motivation, and the trouble getting started and seeing something through. Like, it will look very different. Some
Yeah.
people will sleep a lot to
Mm.
avoid, right? Others can't sleep at all.
Yeah.
Some people will gain weight, some people will lose weight, some people are eating their feelings, some people aren't eating at all, right?
Yeah.
And so it really is sitting with that person and really understanding what is going on here. Talk me through your emotional experience, talk me through your physical experience, your mental experience, your history, right?
Yeah.
And really understanding what how might depression be showing up for you specifically,
Mm. Yeah. I
right?
I love that. I love that. And it's so, yeah, I do love that because it's so unique to the person. It seems like the name is the same, but the actual responses that we are feeling inside of our bodies can be so varied that it's almost easy to miss or not even be able to explain.
I totally agree with that, right? And then you're going to have some people who and I want to give a bit of a warning here, but you're going to have some people who experience suicidal thoughts as a part of their depression experience, and you'll have some folks who have never had that experience as part of their depression, right? So it's going to look different, and this is why it's really important as practitioners that we understand the cultural differences at play here too, right?
Yeah.
And depression in men will look different than depression in women too, right? So there are all these factors that we have to consider as you're completing an assessment, and really tailor that to the person who is sitting in front of you rather than what you may have learned in a book.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. And so I know that you're a clinical psychologist and you see clients one on one and in family groups. But I also know that you have the women's group um, that you're doing as well. Uh-oh, did I lose you? Oh no. Be right back, guys. Let me see if I can fix this. Hey guys, hey. So I seem to have lost Dr. Latoya. Oh no. So I'm gonna try to. She's back.
I'm here. I'm here.
Hi. Listen, it was getting good. That's how you know it was getting good. Whew. All right. Breathe, stretch, shake, let it go. Um, we were talking about your group program.
This is how, listen, this is real life CEO stuff, it feels like, because you never know when the unexpected is going to happen and you have to pivot very quickly.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it happened.
The pivot is a part of it. The pivot probably is the whole thing. And I think that's something no one really tells you when you get started. It's just like make the plan and then stick to the plan. And it's just like, no. The second you begin one experiment, everything's gonna crash around you and you get to learn, which is actually kind of a good point. So I guess we can keep going with that. Um, as a black woman CEO, right? And then you're jumping into risk because entrepreneurship is all risk, but we're so afraid of shame. How do you how do you even help to manage with that? Like what are some frameworks or ideas that you help people to go through to even release the strength in the moment of not knowing when they think they should know?
So some of it is really about um, getting them to challenge that mindset, getting them to examine the mindset that's holding those strength based behaviors in place,
Yeah.
to really examine that. Where did you learn that? Where did it come from? What how is it serving you or not serving you, right?
Mm,
And what would be better here? What would be healthier here? Right? Because clearly it's not working for you. So that's one aspect of it. But
yeah.
two, really, I do a lot of psychoeducation around emotions because people are so tuned out of their emotional experience that
Yeah.
giving them some language to describe and understand their emotions, to really tune in to see, how do I really feel about that? How is that really affecting me? And allowing that to really come through, and teaching them to give themselves permission to just feel how you feel, rather than judging it, trying to get rid of it, trying to stuff it
Mm,
down, right? To really just embrace, this is really how I'm feeling. No, it doesn't feel good, but I'm going to be okay. Right. So really, and normalizing, because that's the problem with this whole strength narrative for Black women, is it keeps us from being seen as human beings who experience the full experience of emotions.
yeah.
Right. So we experience all the emotions. And there
Yeah.
are times when, almost all the time, where we're experiencing emotion, it's normal to be feeling that way,
Yeah.
right? And so to normalize that as part of the human experience, it doesn't make you weird or odd or anything like that. It just is. And learning to accept and embrace and understand that part of yourself.
I love that so much. Just even the idea of naming emotions, right? Because so many of us were raised in places where it's like you're always supposed to be happy and present happiness, and that's really just it. So as far as existing in other emotions, right? Like you can't really do it. Like stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. You show up and you're supposed to smile and hug everybody, and even in your discomfort, like you're not allowed to really express or like feel those things. You're just supposed to perform.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And even what you said about it's serving you, right? Like we don't do these things. We don't hold on to shame, or we don't hold on to, I'm sorry, I'm big on the word shame. Brene Brown is my girl. So I'm it's always a lot of like shame work for me, but I actually like had to flip it and say, how do you become an uninterrupted masterpiece? And I'm leaning
Mm,
into the positive language more. But the fact is, you holding on to those things, it serves you. Those negative things, it actually does serve you in some way, even if it's not in the best ways.
right.
Um, can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's something that we don't recognize that we're doing in order to even put it down.
I agree. And some of that is also part of the work, right? Really understanding and digging deep. How is that serving you?
Yeah.
Right. And you talked about it a little bit. Every family has unspoken, unwritten rules about emotional expression, right? Which emotions are acceptable, which aren't, and what are the acceptable ways of expressing those emotions within this family, right? And
Mm,
there are subtle ways that those things are taught. Right.
yeah.
So you as a child, you understood when mom, dad, or whomever was your caretaker, you understood when they were angry, when they were frustrated, when they were happy, when they were sad. Like you understood. They didn't say those words to you,
Yeah.
but you knew from their behavior, right? And you were taught when it was okay to express those emotions, when it was okay to talk about those emotions or not okay. We carry that into our adult lives, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do. We do it at work, we do it at home, we do it in our friendships, our relationships, in our marriages, in our dating experiences. We take those rules that we learned early on, whether they serve us or not, and we continue to perpetuate them.
Ooh, you said it. We respond to the emotions that are around us, even though it's like unspoken. It's like truth can't exist if there's no room for it. Yeah, that right. That is. So how do you? I mean, so how do you make room for truth? Because I don't think you can necessarily expect it from other people all the time, right? And I think there's almost like this desire to be safe with other people, but I think the only thing you can foundationally do is create safety for yourself. So like I don't know, and maybe that's too much of a question, right? And I know you have your group, and I feel like this might actually be a really good tie-in for that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
what does creating safety for yourself look like, and how does it look like in process, especially with your group? Let's talk about
Let's talk about it. So creating safety for self, I think first is really about being able to acknowledge and admit to yourself, these are my experiences.
it.
These are my emotions, and it's okay. Right? Because so often, especially in my experience with women, they are often quick to talk themselves out of how they feel. So they judge it. If they can name it, they judge it. And then they talk themselves out of feeling like this. Well, I really shouldn't be angry, right? I really shouldn't be, frustrated. I really shouldn't. And so you talk yourself right out of the emotional experience, often before you even fully understand what's happening. So,
Yeah.
first, part of that safety is you accepting and acknowledging your emotional experience, right? And then identifying those people in your space, in your circle, in your friend group that you can share that with, right? Even if
Mm,
it's a little bit at a time, and recognize, I recognize you are taking a chance, right? But it is often a chance well worth it,
mm,
and it's usually received really well. Now, how does that tie into my group? I am doing a 6-week group, all based on the strong Black woman. The name of the group is called Nourishing the Strong Black Woman. It includes my self care journal that I wrote specifically for the strong Black woman. So, over the course of these 6 weeks, we are using that journal, the prompts, the exercises, to take a really deep dive into what is the strong Black woman? What does that mean? There are 3 core features that we talk in great detail about. Those include emotional strength and regulation, caretaking, and independence. So we're going to pull each of those apart, right?
ooh,
Spend a lot of time digging into those concepts. How do they show up in your life? How are they showing up in your relationships? Right? How is it showing up in how you parent, in how you,
mm,
right? It's showing up. You need to pay attention to how and where, right? So that's a part of it. And we spend a good amount of time creating a plan of self care that includes practices with vulnerability. So developing that plan for your whole self care, and a plan for how you will continue to practice vulnerability in your relationships.
I love that. That is excellent. And the name, um, nourish is such a beautiful and rich word just because of how it's a process, right? I think we think of nourishment sometimes. There's a difference between eating and being nourished.
Yes.
Yeah. Like you can eat, you can take something in and it's all junk and you might feel full, but you're not satisfied and you're not putting anything into your body that's going to sustain you.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that so much.
Thank you. I'm really excited about the program. I'm excited about the journal. I remember sitting with a coach I was working with, and she asked, as I was talking to her about the strong Black woman, she's like, "Where's your book?" And I said, "Huh, I don't have a book." And she said, "Why?" And I said, I don't know." And she said, "What you just described is your book." She said,
Yeah.
"You are doing these things day after day, week after week with these women. You got a book in you."
Yeah.
And I sat with that and I'm like, she's right. These are some of the prompts in the book, are prompts that I have used repeatedly.
Yeah.
And it was a matter of somebody simply saying to me, "Hey, make the book. Sit down and make the book. You already have it."
I love that. Shout out to that coach. If you're comfortable sharing her name, feel free. Like I
Yes,
love.
yes. She was amazing. Her name was is Coach T Renee. And she actually wrote a book called The CEO Life, or the CEO Habit. CEO
Oh,
Life. It's a planner.
all
Yeah.
right,
So
all
she
right. I'm
sat
excited for
she
her.
spent some time with me, going over my group. It wasn't even a group then. It was just an idea,
Yeah,
and really helped me come full circle with that.
I love that. Shout out to T Renee. Thank you for your service and your work. Seriously, and
Yeah.
I love that. Like, it. You know what? I'm excited about your group. So if you are here, if you are a Black woman, if you are just looking to become I hope that you take this group seriously. I will drop it in the comments and in the description, and make sure that you have access to this kind of life changing material. Seriously.
Yeah, it really is, and I'm gonna run it again in the new year. It's the cohort style, I think, creates an
Mhm.
opportunity for built-in community.
Yeah.
Just sort of other Black women working together, taking these chances and these risks together. That was for me. Just learning to be more vulnerable was extremely challenging, especially because I don't know if this was something you were taught in your household. It certainly was a part of mine. This idea that, what happens here stays here. And I sort of generalized that to, you keep what you're going through private, and you figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
There is no reason to put your business out there like that, and the whole problem with that was I had a group of friends, I had a community who were ready, willing, and able to help me, but because I was afraid of being vulnerable and putting my business out there,
Yeah.
I wasn't sharing with them what I was going through. And so I was really going through it alone, yet I had these people around me who, as soon as I took the chance and shared what I was going through, man, the number of women who wrapped their arms around me and just jumped right in, even if there was not anything, they couldn't fix my problem, right? They
Yeah.
can't do that, but I didn't feel alone with it anymore. I didn't feel this loneliness, and again, that sense of shame. I now had some sounding boards. I now had some folks who could hug me, who could hold my hand, who could reassure me that, in time, this would be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. And it's, I think sometimes we're often the helper and never allow ourselves to be the helped. And it's such a hurdle to overcome, because of course we're reaching out to each other because we love each other, and we're like, if you need anything, please, you know, reach out and tell me the truth about who you are. But at the same time, as we're saying that to each other, like, we ourselves are not modeling the behavior to actually, reach out and be the person who receives help.
Well, and some of that is rooted in I know what my friend is going through, and I don't
Yeah.
want to burden her with my stuff.
Yeah.
She's already got a lot on her plate, and I don't want her worrying about me. I don't want to take her attention away from all the things that I know she has to do. So I don't want to be a burden to her. I think we also
Yeah.
are afraid that, what if I'm vulnerable? What if I share that I have this need or that I'm struggling in this way and nobody does anything?
Mm. You know what? That brings up a really good question. How do we vet the people in our lives to know if they are worthy of receiving our truth?
I love that. So part of that is assessing, is this relationship conditional?
Mm,
Is this right? We talk about reciprocity in relationships, and I think that there's a difference between reciprocity in relationships and relationships that are conditional, right? I love and care for you as long as you do it my way, as long as you show up for me, as long as loan me money when I ask. I love you as long as X.
mm.
right? And we often know whether or not those relationships are conditional. We stay in them because of fear, right? But we know. So I would encourage folks to assess if that relationship is one-sided. If you find yourself being everybody else's emergency contact, but you don't have an emergency contact, or that person can't serve as your
Yeah,
emergency contact, then
yeah,
what's happening in that relationship?
yeah, yeah. That is excellent. That is excellent. And to be honest with yourself when you see the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that is so good. Okay, so we can honestly talk about this forever. But I want to talk about you and your business and also yourself. So obviously you're a licensed clinician, but that doesn't mean your business model has to be just therapy practice. How did you decide to A, even have a practice, and then B, branch out into coaching?
So that's a great question. I was teaching. I was providing clinical supervision. Um, and I didn't like the demand on my time, to be honest. When you are a professor in a doctorate program and you're sitting on a bunch of dissertation committees, you're sitting on other professional committees, and at the time, my kids were young. I think when I got my doctorate, my son was 11 or 12. My daughter was just turning 6. So, I was teaching and there was such a demand on my time and attention.
Mm,
Um, and I needed more freedom from that.
yeah,
Not to mention, to be frank, I was in an institution, a predominantly white institution, and just um I didn't feel like my talents were appreciated there. And
yeah,
so what I said to myself was, I can stay here and I can have the financial security and be miserable, or I can figure out a way to create some freedom for myself and maybe some happiness too. And so I started my practice. It was a part-time practice. I started my practice as a weekend job, if you can believe that. So I was seeing patients Friday and Saturday, and I was teaching and supervising the rest of the time. And within that first year and a half of having my practice, one, I turned a profit, which I didn't expect. And two, I was even more unhappy because now I'm juggling two things. Um, and so I said, you know what? I talked to my husband. I said, how would you feel if I let go of the teaching job? And I couldn't believe it when he said to me, I think if you poured the time and attention that you give in that school into your
mm,
thing will be just fine. And I said, huh, okay. And that spring, I gave notice and jumped head first into my practice. So I started off solo, and then I hired one clinician, and I had a business partner, and so she was running her practice, I was running mine, but we were sharing expenses, sharing the space, and sort of she was providing mentorship and guidance because she had owned a practice for a number of years. I
yeah,
had not. So that was really helpful in terms of getting started. But I left academia because I became a doctor to have two things: freedom, financial freedom, and freedom of time. I wanted
Yeah.
to be able to control how I was spending my time.
Yeah. That is, I love that. I love that. That is such a great transition story. And like the support of your husband, I know that had to be extremely freeing when he was like, I believe you can do this. Like,
It
I thought,
was. It
yeah,
was because I think part of my experience was um I had taken family time and resources to pursue a doctorate degree, and part
yeah,
of that was to be able to contribute financially to my family. And here
yeah,
I was talking about leaving a job that was paying really good money. I'm going to leave this job to start a business or to run my business with all of these unknowns, and that's the
yeah,
thing. When you have a job, there's a certain amount of security, right? Every 2 weeks you're gonna get paid, and you hope that there are not going to be any layoffs, but I was under contract, so the
yeah.
likelihood of something like that happening, but jumping over into your own business is it's a lot more risky.
Just a touch. That is awesome. But I mean, it sounds like, so I don't know, kind of going back to our previous conversation and again thinking about your husband and even this idea that you got the job, you got the doctorate, you did the things in order to provide to be strong, right? And then you had this expectation of something that you should and have to do,
Right.
um, but you were allowed space to to explore, to pivot, to explore softness and pivot in a way that you probably never even anticipated because you had this vision that this first thing was going to be the thing.
Yeah, I definitely went into my education and training to become a psychologist with the mindset that um, I was going to teach, and I was going to
Yeah,
have a small practice, and this is what becoming Dr. Gaines was going to look like. And as that started to unfold, I was like, yeah, nobody told me it was going to look like this. The hours of reading and prepping for class and
yeah,
dissertation work, and there would be times I would be sitting at one of my kids' soccer games, a track meet or something, and I'm there physically, but I'm trying to grade papers.
yeah,
And that didn't feel good. That did not
yeah,
feel good. And so once I went into my own practice, there was a lot of freedom in terms of the kinds of clients I could accept, the hours I would work, and the things that I could do. And over time, even I learned, the importance of diversifying sources of income to create,
mm.
greater flexibility and freedom.
I love that. I love that. I love that. It is definitely a journey of exploration. I think the first thing that we tend to come into, um, as as a founder isn't usually the thing that we end up in.
Hmm.
Like we have this idea and everything looks like very rosy. Like the glasses are very much rose colored. And then as we are working the things, um, the models change, something operationally changes. You might quit something, and I don't know. There's a lot that's happened, and it's important to take care of yourself. So as you are doing this, especially as a clinician, right? You are dealing with other people's things. Um, how do you take care of yourself?
So a few different ways, and we were talking a little bit backstage about this. understanding my optimum work day, right?
Mm,
I'm at my best when I can start a little later in the day. So I don't take my first patient until 11 o'clock. I'm at my best when I'm seeing, about 5 people in a day. I schedule a lunch break. So those little things are my daily little ways of self taking care of myself, right? I end at a decent time. I'm taking my break. I take vacations. There used to be a time before COVID, I was blessed enough that I could take the entire month of August off. I would also take the entire month or part the I would take the 2 weeks into December or the right before Christmas and into the new year off. So just sort of and I schedule vacations every 3 to 4 months, like real time off, real time away,
yeah.
and really use it for that. And then just doing stuff that I enjoy. I love reading. Um, I connect with, my colleagues. So there's a space for consultation when I need it. Prioritizing some time, with friends, um, and just creating. One of the things that we talk about in my group is creating a habit of whole self-care, right? So
Mm,
what does that look like? Thinking about different areas of your life, your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, right? Even thinking about your spiritual health. So creating patterns or habits of self-care in various domains. And they don't all have to be something you do every day or every week. Some of those things might be things that you do, once a month or once every 3 months or, once a quarter or something like that. But those are the things that I do. I work out. I love working out. Um, and that's a great stress reliever. So just finding the things that really work for you and then making it a non-negotiable, putting it in your schedule and making it a non-negotiable.
I love it. I love that so much. Working out in particular. Um, so not even just for like fitness, but to avoid burnout,
Yeah.
I think has been a huge game changer for me. I heard or I read somewhere that like the body has so many things that it deems a threat, but we hardly ever complete the cycle. So
Mm.
if we're not like working out and like releasing and like, pretending we're running from the lion, then then we still have those things inside of us and our body is still trying to fight even though the fight is over.
Ah.
I
Huh.
just I'll send you the video.
Yeah, but there's a part of me that can see that, right? And when we think about the brain body connection too, how the hormones, the neurotransmitters, all the things that get released when we work out and how
Yeah.
it helps our body. And I had to make a mindset shift. And this was actually during COVID
Mm,
where I developed a workout schedule. And it was a way of coping. I wasn't doing exercise to lose weight or to stay in shape. I was
yeah.
using exercise as a way to cope with the additional stress, like sitting with people who were grieving the sudden loss of
Yep.
loved ones was a challenge, to
Yeah.
say the least. And I could feel myself holding it in my body. And so
Mhm.
I started using exercise as a way to cope. It had nothing to do with weight loss or, getting in shape or any of that stuff. And
Yeah.
I think that mindset shift for me was really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I started working out because I needed to create consistency within myself.
Mm.
Like I felt like there was I don't know, I needed a win, you know? And it's not even like it's not weight loss, it wasn't anything like that. It was just I needed to say I did these 15 minutes every day and like high five myself, you
Yeah.
know? It's like you did it. Good job. And then that built like emotional stamina to
Mhm.
be able to do the next thing. And the funny thing is, today I was talking to my husband about something I had to change on LinkedIn where, had I had to do that before, I would be like freaking out and just like so panicked because it's like I'm not that person and maybe I'm pretending and all of these different kinds of things. But due to the emotional stamina that I built up from keeping my promise to myself to actually show up for the workout, it's like, oh yeah, no, that's me. I can be that person because I am going to show up whenever I say that I'm going to show up. Working out is it's a cheat code.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it, ma'am. All right. So your mission is so clear. It is dismantling the narrative of the strong Black woman. Like I'm going to close out on this because I don't want to hold you forever, but I could. But I'm
That's
trying to
okay. I'll
respect
come
your
back.
time.
I'll come back.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Um, why is it important? Why is it important to dismantle the narrative of the strong Black woman?
Here part of my wake up call and why I think this is so important is we are passing this down generationally, and I am not doing that to my kids. I'm not.
Yep.
I'm not. That's
Yeah.
that's it. We're going to, if we're not careful, we're going to create another generation and another generation and another one that continues to perpetuate this. And at some point, we're already cracking, right? This generation of women, we're already cracking.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine putting this on my daughter.
Yeah. 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 Yep. That's the reason.
That hit. That right, that hits, right? When you
Yeah.
think about what it feels like for you. And I'm watching her, just live her best life at 17, and I'm like, I'm not trying to pass this down to my baby.
Yeah. Seriously. Ooh, I'm not gonna cry today. No, I love that completely. Before I have my beautiful bonus daughters, I had my son, and I think one of the most interesting things about having a son is looking at all the other men in the world and and seeing how they respond to women and just kind of very intentionally working to drop the facade of strength so that when he is with his wife, he doesn't look at her and say, well, my mom suffered, so you can suffer.
That part, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, it's not
yeah,
just for our daughters, it's for our sons too, so that they don't have this expectation of the women in their life to, just suffer in silence, just push through,
yeah, yeah,
you got it, you can do it. It's like,
yeah. Like I can't. I need a high five, a hug, and maybe $5,000 to make this work.
listen, all of that.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. Dr. La-Toya Gaines. Jeez. All right. So please, one more time, tell us about your program, where we can find you online, and how we can continue to get to know you further.
Absolutely. So I've got Facebook and Instagram, Dr. La-Toya Gaines Speaks, for both of those. And then my website, fmcounselingmichigan.com, /shop is where you can find the journal. There is actually a digital version that you can download immediately. And then there's the spiral bound version. I can actually show that to you. There's the spiral version.
Pretty.
And then there also is the group, and I do webinars throughout. So there's also a tab where folks can join my email group. And I do share newsletters, different blog posts, and just different tips and strategies for coping, dealing with being a strong Black woman, among other mental health things, self-care strategies, that kind of stuff. So please join and look out, join the email subscriber so that you can get notices when that next group starts or when the next webinar is coming up.
Excellent, excellent. Dr. Gaines, you are amazing. This was refreshing. Some tears fell, and that was
Thank you.
purifying the soul. I'm grateful that you are here, and I look forward to having you again. Seriously.
I look forward to being back here with you, having more intense and interesting dialogue. That hour went really quick, so that's really good.
Flew.
Um, and
It
we
seriously
could have
is.
easily continued. So I thank you for having me and inviting me, and I look forward to coming back and getting to know your audience and contributing to your audience as well.
Thank you so much. You have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Ooh, guys. So I am breathing that in a little bit. So I'm actually going to do that for the rest of the night. So again, if you don't know me, Olivia Thomas, the founder of Intentional Development Co., your favorite business and brand strategist, your chief brand officer, helping you to flourish and move from hustling to wholeness. Seriously, if you want to work with me, I will drop my details in the comments and in the description. Guys, thank you for joining us on Maven Mondays, and I will see you next week. Bye.